Tomorrow, at exactly 2 o'clock in the afternoon in Washington, one man is going to say a handful of sentences. And those sentences could decide whether millions of ordinary savers watch their gold and silver holdings surge or watch them bleed. Nobody knows which way it goes. Not the banks, not the traders, not even the man himself, not for certain. And that uncertainty is exactly why you need to understand what's coming before it happens, not after. Here's why this matters to you, even if you've never bought a single ounce of gold in your life. If you have a retirement account, if you have savings in a bank, if you buy groceries, pay rent, or worry about your money losing value while you sleep, tomorrow's decision touches all of it. The Federal Reserve doesn't just set interest rates for banks, it sets the temperature for the entire financial world, and gold and silver are often the first assets to feel the heat or the chill. Picture a vault somewhere beneath a central bank building, rows of gold bars stacked in silence worth more than most people will earn in a lifetime. Now picture a trading floor a few miles away, screens flashing red and green, where a single sentence from a press conference can move the value of that vault by billions of dollars before the coffee even gets cold. That's the gap we're talking about tomorrow. The gap between a slow, silent asset and a fast, nervous market. If you're interested in money, investing, gold, silver, and protecting your financial future, subscribe to Money Insights and like this video, because every week we break down the biggest financial stories in simple English. So let's start with what we actually know, because the facts here are stranger than most people realize. Tomorrow and the day after, July 28th and 29th, the Federal Reserve's Policy Committee meets in Washington for one of its 8 scheduled meetings of the year. This particular meeting is what's called a non-projection meeting, meaning the Fed won't release its usual dot plot, the chart that shows where each Fed official privately expects interest rates to go. That might sound like a small technical detail. It isn't. It means markets will be flying with less information than usual, reacting purely to the words in a single statement and whatever the Fed chair says in the press conference that follows at 2:30. And here's where it gets interesting. This is one of the earliest, most closely watched meetings under Kevin Warsh, who was sworn in as Fed chair back in May, and whose debut meeting in June already set a hawkish tone. A new chair changes the psychology of every meeting. Markets don't just listen to what he says, they're still trying to learn how he thinks, what he prioritizes, and how much patience he has for inflation that refuses to fully cool down. History offers a useful parallel here, even if it never repeats exactly. Whenever a new Fed chair takes the podium for the first few high-stakes meetings, markets tend to overreact to every word, hunting for clues about a reaction function they haven't fully mapped out yet. Analysts pore over word choices the way detectives pore over a crime scene. Was patient swapped for cautious? Did he say elevated instead of sticky? Small shifts in language, multiplied across a room full of traders who manage trillions of dollars, can create outsized swings that have very little to do with the actual economic data and everything to do with uncertainty about the man behind the microphone. For months now, the Fed has held its benchmark interest rate steady in a range of 3.5% to 3.75%. Multiple meetings in a row, no change. That sounds stable, almost boring. But here's the contradiction almost nobody talks about. Even though the rate hasn't moved, the conversation underneath it has been getting louder, not quieter. Going into this meeting, prediction markets were pricing roughly an 80% chance the Fed holds rates steady again. That's the consensus, the safe bet. But sitting right behind it was something unusual, nearly a 1 in 5 chance being priced for a rate hike. Not a cut, a hike. In an economy where much of the public conversation has been about when the Fed will finally start cutting, a meaningful slice of the market has been quietly betting the opposite could happen instead. Why would anyone bet on a hike right now? This is where the investigation gets uncomfortable. Earlier this year, inflation data came in hot, driven partly by a sharp surge in energy costs tied to tensions in the Middle East that pushed year-over-year inflation up toward the low 4% range, well above the Fed's 2% target. Then, just 2 weeks before this meeting, new inflation data landed, and it told a very different story. The headline number cooled sharply, dropping to around 3.5%, with the largest single-month decline in years. On the surface, that sounds like good news, the kind that would let the Fed relax. But markets often react to the story behind the number, not just the number itself. And the story behind this cooling is murky. Was it a genuine turning point or a temporary dip before energy prices climb again? Nobody can say for certain. Historically, inflation rarely falls in a straight line. It comes down in stutters with false all-clears along the way. The Fed knows this history better than anyone, which is exactly why a single month of good data is unlikely to make Kevin Warsh declare victory tomorrow. So picture the room. A new chair, a divided committee, one hot inflation report still fresh in memory, one cooler report that arrived just in time to complicate things, and a meeting where the Fed won't even show its own internal forecast. That is not a stable, predictable setup. That is a genuine test. Arguably the first real test of this Fed under its new leadership. Now, here's where gold enters the story, and where most people watching the headlines are missing the bigger picture entirely. Gold has had an extraordinary run. Just this past January, gold prices tore through record after record, ultimately peaking somewhere in the range of $5,500 to $5,600 an ounce, a level almost nobody predicted a few years earlier. Since then, gold has pulled back significantly, trading in recent days somewhere around $4,000 to $4,140 an ounce. That's a correction of roughly a quarter from the peak. To a casual observer, that might look like the gold story is over, like the party ended in January and everyone should have already cashed out. But here's the part almost nobody notices, because it doesn't show up in the daily price ticker. While retail investors have been nervously watching gold cool off, the world's central banks have been doing something almost the opposite. China's central bank, the People's Bank of China, has now bought gold for 20 consecutive months, 20 months in a row, without a single month of selling. That streak is the longest since at least 2015. In June alone, China added close to 15 tons of gold to its reserves, its largest single monthly purchase since 2023. And it did this during a stretch when gold prices were falling, not rising. Let that sink in for a moment. The most sophisticated reserve manager on earth was buying more aggressively precisely when the price was getting cheaper, not when headlines were screaming gold to the moon. Why would a government do that? Because central banks don't trade the way you or I might trade. They're not trying to catch a quick swing in price. They're rebalancing what they hold as insurance against an uncertain future, against currency risk, against geopolitical shocks, against the possibility that the dollar-dominated financial system doesn't look the same 20 years from now. And China's gold holdings, even after 20 months of buying, still make up under 10% of its total reserves, compared to roughly 70% for many Western central banks. That gap tells you something important. If this really is a long-term rebalancing strategy, China could theoretically keep buying gold for years, even decades, almost regardless of what happens in any single Fed meeting. China isn't alone either. A global survey of central bank reserve managers released this year found that nearly 9 out of 10 of them expect worldwide official gold reserves to keep climbing over the next 12 months. This isn't a fringe belief. It's close to consensus among the very institutions that move the largest sums of gold on the planet. Imagine cargo planes quietly landing in Beijing unmarked, carrying pallets of bullion instead of consumer goods. Imagine a reserve manager sitting in an office ignoring the daily ticker on a Bloomberg terminal completely, because their instructions are measured in decades, not days. That's the picture behind the number. It's not a headline moment, and it never makes the evening news the way a stock market crash does, but it's arguably one of the most consequential financial trends of this entire decade, unfolding almost silently in the background. So here's the hidden connection most retail investors miss. While short-term traders obsess over whether the Fed holds or hikes tomorrow, a slower, much bigger current has been running underneath the entire market. Sovereign nations, quietly. A deliberately shifting away from paper currency and into physical metal. Tomorrow's FOMC decision might move gold's price by $50 or $100 in a day. China's 20-month buying streak represents a multi-year, multi-decade repositioning that doesn't care about a single afternoon in Washington. But if you think gold's story is complicated, silver's story might be even more dramatic. And this is where the numbers get genuinely hard to believe. Silver also hit its own historic peak in January, trading somewhere near $120 an ounce, an almost unthinkable level for a metal that spent years trading closer to $20 or $30. Since then, silver has fallen even harder than gold in percentage terms, down roughly half from its January high, recently trading in the high $50 range. If gold's pullback looks like a quarter off the top, silver's looks almost like a free fall. And yet, here's the contradiction that should stop you in your tracks. The physical silver market is more starved for supply right now than at almost any point on record. According to the Silver Institute's latest survey, the world is heading toward its 6th consecutive year of a global silver supply deficit, with a shortfall in the tens of millions of ounces for this year alone. 6 years. Not one bad year, not a temporary blip. 6 straight years where the world has consumed more silver than it has mined. Why can't miners just produce more silver to close that gap? This is the detail that changes how you think about the entire silver market. Roughly 70% of the world's silver doesn't come from silver mines at all. It comes as a byproduct of mining for copper, lead, and zinc. Those mining operations are built around the economics of those other metals, not silver. So even when silver prices spike, those byproduct mines don't suddenly produce more silver, because that's not why they exist. And building an entirely new primary silver mine from discovery to actual production can take somewhere between 7 and 15 years. 7 to 15 years. That means even if every mining company on Earth decided today to chase higher silver prices, the physical supply of silver could not meaningfully increase for the better part of a decade. Meanwhile, demand keeps climbing from directions that have nothing to do with jewelry or coins. Silver is a critical component in solar panels, in electric vehicles, in semiconductors, and increasingly in the data centers powering artificial intelligence. Every one of those industries is growing, and none of them reduced their silver purchases just because the metal had a rough month. Industrial buyers now account for well over half of all global silver demand, and that demand doesn't behave like a stock trader glued to a screen. It behaves like a factory that needs a specific number of ounces every single week to keep production running, price swings or not. So you have a metal that has fallen nearly in half from its peak, sitting inside a market that has recorded a supply shortfall for 6 consecutive years, feeding industries that are structurally incapable of walking away. That combination, cratering price alongside worsening scarcity, is one of the strangest setups precious metals investors have seen in years, and it's happening almost entirely outside the headlines that everyone else is watching. There's another number quietly confirming this imbalance: the gold to silver ratio, which measures how many ounces of silver it takes to buy a single ounce of gold. Right now, that ratio sits close to 70-1, well above levels many analysts consider historically normal. Some traders view a stretched ratio like this as a signal that silver has become unusually cheap relative to gold, not a guarantee of what happens next, but a flashing light that at least some part of this market looks out of balance. Whether that gap closes because silver climbs, gold falls, or both move at once, nobody can say with certainty. But a ratio this wide has, historically, rarely stayed put for long. Think about the factory floor behind all of this. A technician installing solar panels on a rooftop doesn't check the silver price before finishing the job. An automaker assembling electric vehicle components doesn't pause production because silver had a rough week on the futures market. A server farm running artificial intelligence workloads doesn't rip out its wiring because of a Fed meeting. Every one of those silver-consuming machines keeps running day after day, completely indifferent to what happens in Washington tomorrow afternoon. Now bring it back to tomorrow, because here's where all these threads start to connect. If the Fed holds rates steady, as roughly 8 in 10 market participants currently expect, that's generally viewed as a mild positive for gold and silver, since it removes the immediate threat of even higher rates making non-yielding metals less attractive compared to bonds. But mild positive doesn't mean explosive. Markets have already priced in a hold as the likely outcome, so a hold alone may not move prices dramatically. What moves markets is surprise. If, instead, the Fed signals real concern about inflation and even hints at a possible hike later this year, something a meaningful minority of traders are already betting could happen, that would represent a genuine surprise to a market currently leaning toward steady as she goes. Higher rates historically tend to pressure gold and silver in the short term, because rising yields make it more attractive to hold interest-bearing assets like treasury bonds instead of metal that pays you nothing just for holding it. A hawkish surprise from a still new Fed chair, on a day when no dot plot even exists to soften the blow, could trigger a sharper reaction than usual. And there's a version of this story that almost nobody is preparing for. What if the Fed's language sounds tough on inflation in the short term, while the deeper structural forces, China's 20-month buying streak, the 6-year silver deficit, industrial demand from AI and solar that isn't going anywhere, simply continue, underneath the surface, unaffected? In that scenario, you could see a short, sharp dip in metals prices around the announcement, followed by the same long-term forces reasserting themselves in the weeks after, once the immediate news cycle fades. This is the pattern that keeps repeating throughout gold and silver's history. Short-term price action gets driven by headlines, by a single Fed statement, by one hot or cool inflation report. Long-term price direction gets driven by something slower and heavier, central bank behavior, or industrial demand, mine supply that takes over a decade to build. Traders obsess over the short-term noise because that's where the excitement is. But the people who look back on gold and silver's biggest moves years later almost always trace them back to the slow, structural stories that were quietly building the entire time. Think about what this actually means for an ordinary family. A retiree watching their savings account barely keep pace with rising grocery bills, doing the math in their head every time they push a shopping cart down the aisle and notice prices creeping up again. A young couple trying to figure out where to put money that won't quietly lose value over the next 20 years, aware that the house they're saving for keeps getting more expensive faster than their paycheck grows. A small business owner who watched borrowing costs climb over the past few years and wants to know whether that pressure is about to get worse or finally start easing, because a loan payment either way changes whether they can hire another employee this year. None of these people are trading gold futures for a living, but every one of them is affected by the same forces driving this story: inflation, interest rates, and whether the dollar in their pocket is worth what it was a year ago. This is exactly why gold and silver occupy such a strange emotional space in people's minds. For some families, a small stack of coins in a safe isn't about chasing profit at all. It's about sleeping better at night, knowing that whatever happens to a bank account number on a screen, there's something physical, something that has held value across centuries of currencies rising and falling. That emotional pull isn't irrational. It's rooted in a very long history of paper money losing purchasing power, while a bar of gold from 100 years ago still buys roughly what it always has. Here's the reality check, and it's an important one. Nobody, including the Fed itself, can tell you with certainty what happens to gold and silver prices in the days immediately following tomorrow's decision. Markets can rally on a hold and then reverse hours later. Markets can drop hard on hawkish language and then recover completely by the following week. Anyone promising you a guaranteed outcome from a single Fed meeting is not being honest with you, whether they're bullish or bearish. What history actually shows is a pattern, not a certainty. Precious metals tend to be sensitive to short-term rate surprises and largely indifferent over the long run to the underlying structural forces of scarce supply and steady sovereign demand. It's also worth remembering that markets rarely move in straight lines, even when the underlying story is clear. Gold's plunge from its January peak didn't happen because central banks suddenly stopped buying. It happened alongside cooling inflation expectations, shifting rate bets, and ordinary profit-taking after an extraordinary run. Silver's collapse toward the high 50s didn't happen because solar panels stopped needing the metal. It happened because short-term traders, spooked by rising yields and a stronger dollar, sold first and asked questions later. Untangling the noise from the signal is honestly the hardest part of following any market. And tomorrow will almost certainly add another layer of noise on top of an already complicated picture. So where does that leave the central question we started with? Could tomorrow really be gold and silver's biggest test yet? In the short term, yes, in the sense that markets are unusually uncertain heading into this particular meeting, with a new Fed chair, no dot plot, and a real, if smaller, chance of a hawkish surprise that most investors aren't fully pricing in. That combination creates the ingredients for a sharper than usual reaction, whichever direction it breaks. But in the bigger sense, the test isn't really about tomorrow at all. The real test has been running for 20 straight months in China's central bank vaults, and for 6 straight years in a silver market that simply cannot produce enough metal to keep up with what solar panels, electric vehicles, and AI data centers are consuming. Tomorrow's headline will fade within a news cycle. The slower story, nations quietly repositioning away from paper currency and an industrial world that needs more silver than the ground can currently give it, does not fade nearly as quickly. That doesn't mean panic, and it doesn't mean blind optimism either. It means paying attention to both timeframes at once, watching tomorrow's announcement for what it reveals about a new Fed chair's instincts, while keeping half an eye on the much bigger, much slower story that's been building underneath the entire market since long before this meeting was ever scheduled. Understanding the difference between short-term noise and long-term structure is, in the end, what separates people who react emotionally to every headline from people who genuinely understand where the money is moving and why. If you learned something new today, make sure to subscribe to Money Insights and like this video. More powerful financial insights are coming next.